Well, I started writing the film in '95. I wrote a treatment in '95, and at that time, and it had all the characters in it and creatures and settings and so on that are in the movie, and some more besides. But at the time, it turned out that it wasn't technically possible to do what I wanted to do, which is to create humanoid alien characters using performance capture techniques, so that they didn't look like people in makeup like all the Star Trek aliens we've seen for the last 40 years. We wanted to do a very specific technique, and it wasn't possible. So I just literally put the project in a drawer, forgot about it. And then about 4 years ago, I got it out and dusted it off and read it and said, that's not too bad a story. I bet that would make a pretty good movie. That'd make a movie that I'd want to go see. That what we were about to do was significantly beyond what had already been done. Because not only did we want absolute reality in terms of human performance as it was created by our actors, but we had to do it for a large number of characters, and previously it had only typically been done for one character. And even in a big movie, you had one Davy Jones, you had one King Kong. We knew that the scale of what we were doing was going to be greater, and that the technique to achieve a kind of absolute authenticity of performance was going to have to be created, was going to have to be pushed farther than it had existed up until then. So the Na'vi, in my mind, represent an aspect of ourselves that we want to be. When you see the Na'vi and you see how they live in their world and how kind of fearless and beautiful and agile they are, it's such a celebration of human motion and human behavior, maybe at a time historically when we were closer to the earth and where we understood the cycles of nature in a way that we've sort of lost touch with. So maybe the Na'vi are, in a sense, our better selves. Maybe they're something that we know we're losing in ourselves that we need to get back to. To me, that's how this works. And I think that's how the movie works. When you see the film, you want to be like them. You want to be them. He's a fish out of water. He's not a scientist. He doesn't really belong there. He's kind of been dropped into this situation through a curious set of circumstances because he happens to have exactly the same genome as his twin brother, who was trained for the mission for 5 years and is now dead. And they're gonna lose a $50 million avatar if they can't, but he can link with it because his nervous system is genetically the same or very similar. So he gets dropped into this situation. What I tried to do with Jake was write a guy that guys could relate to, because he comes from doesn't come from wealth, he doesn't come from privilege, he comes from probably a very working class background. He was a Marine, so he represents certain things that I think are important to men, a sense of duty, a sense of courage, a sense of being able to stand up to a challenge. And so I think he's relatable. What Grace Augustine, Sigourney Weaver's character, is trying to do is create a cultural bridge of trust with these local people. Unfortunately, she keeps getting sabotaged by her own humans at the base, who are, because you've got this hyper military security force called the SecOps, and the SecOps are always doing things to defend the base against creatures and Na'vi alike. They don't care. The only good Na'vi they ever saw was one that they had just shot. So they see the Na'vi in very different terms than Grace does. They see them as hostiles. They call them the hostiles, or the indigenous, or the aboriginals. And they'd just as soon they weren't around. I think it's tricky to pigeonhole Avatar as science fiction because you immediately think, oh, robots and time travel and space travel and all that. And even though it takes space travel to get us to Pandora, once we're on Pandora, it's really much more of an action adventure fantasy that takes place in a rich, lush rainforest environment, a virgin world really, kind of the Garden of Eden, but a Garden of Eden with teeth and claws.